It gives me great pleasure to introduce our immediate past president, Dionysios Rochidis. Dionysios has been the president for the last 2 years at a really, really difficult time for the society, and he's really championed and led us through what was a bumpy ride into what looks like very green pastures now. So on behalf of the society, Dionysios, we want to recognise your achievements. So first of all, I'd like you to come to the stage, and we have an award for you. So this is a thank you for your tenure as president of ERAS USA. And can you just bring this slide up, please? If you could stay on the stage for a second. What you all know from Dionysios' name is he's Greek. And I don't know if you know, but we did a search on Ancestry.com, and it turns out that Dionysios' great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather was actually Hippocrates in Greece, who, as you know, is the founder of medicine. But also, I don't know if you know, Hippocrates was way ahead of his time. This is 460 BC. He described the oldest known ERAS program. And I'm sure you know he's very famous for saying, walking is man's best medicine, and let food be the medicine, and medicine be the food. So, because Dionysios has actually, he hasn't seen the picture yet, you see. Because Dionysios, oh, you have seen the picture. Because I wanted to award you with a bust of Hippocrates, but because it was during COVID, we added a little mask here. So congratulations.
Thank you so much.
So that will be a memory of being the president during COVID. Oh, you want a photo? That's fine. Good. And because of last year, he missed his president's speech. We've actually asked him to come and give us a talk today. So, sorry, just checking something. So, we're actually going to establish the past president's speech as an annual thing now. And so if we could go to the next slide, please. That's very good, thank you. So one of the things that Dionysios has done is really driven data. I think if you've seen any of his presentations and what he's done in Atrium Health, it's absolutely amazing. So he's going to give a lecture on real-time audit and prescriptive analytics within pathways that eliminates variation in care. So he calls this the flexible ERAS concept. So without further ado, thank you very much.
Well, Mike, thank you so much for this unexpected surprise and the masked Hippocrates. I'm pretty sure it's going to get a lot of Twitter feeds. Let me start by saying that I'm very, very grateful for asking me to talk about a subject that is very close to my heart, and this is ERAS 2.0, meaning after 20 years of getting guidelines out, where should ERAS be going from here? Should we just stick on developing more guidelines, more accurate guidelines, more evidence-based guidelines, and monitoring the compliance, or we should start expanding? And I believe that there is a way forward. Might not be the only way, but it is one of the ways. In order to talk about flexible ERAS, we need to understand 3 different elements. The first is the outcome situation awareness and how to achieve it. Outcome situation awareness in real time. The second is prescriptive, not just predictive analytics. And the third is to identify where the pathways that eliminate variation in care, like ERAS, conflict with the new trend of personalized medicine. Everybody in this room knows that the 3 pillars of healthcare are clinical outcomes, financial outcomes, and patient-reported outcomes. And when we talk about outcome situation awareness, we mean this knowledge of all the three pillars of healthcare in real time, in a customizable fashion, so as in an interactive fashion, so as to be able to interact with the data that they are flowing towards us. How can we do that? Especially since most of these data, clinical, financial, and patient-reported, most of the times they are captured in a siloed way, and they exist in silos. One of the ways that one could apply, not the only one, but one of the ways is to create a central registry and bring the outcomes into this registry from the three sources. Here you can see our EMR is the source for the clinical outcomes. The patient-reported outcomes platform that we use in our institution, it's proprietary, but you can have your own created like Kevin has done at Harvard. And also in this situation is the ABC cost database that we have from our administrators. Once you connect them to the central repository, then you can use your visualization platform. That could be Tableau, as we initially had, or it could be Power BI or anything else that you want, so as to create something that every provider can have in his office. And I'm going to give you screenshots of that so as to understand exactly how it works. So it's day that you go to your office and you switch on your PC, you can see exactly what is happening. Now, let's go a little bit deeper. We say central repository. How do you build this repository? What exactly this repository contains? The way that the repository, in our department, we had 13 divisions and sections, and each division or section, the major caseload is based on a few surgeries. For example, in the division of HPB surgery, we have these 6 cases that you see, these 6 procedures comprise 92% of our case volume. So the repositories, they are built around procedures. How does it look? When I go into my office every day and I switch on my PC, you can see, I see this, this screen. It says clinical outcome situation awareness, financial outcome situation awareness, and patient-reported outcome situation awareness. And if I click in one of those, then it takes me to the next screen where I can choose the repository that I want to draw my outcomes from. So if I have chosen hepatic surgery, then this choice obviously would be different. For this presentation, I chose pancreatic surgery, and of the 2 major pancreatic surgeries we do, I chose the Whipple, and from the Whipple, I chose the length of stay. Keep in mind that in the Kia, the blue screen, you see only 3 outcomes, but this is something that I chose to have. I could very easily ask from my analytic teams to add any outcome that I would like to track. I don't like to have a lot of information pollution in my office, so I choose only these 3 that I think they are very important for me to know on a weekly or on a daily basis how we are doing. That's why you see only 3. But it's a matter of literally 24 to 48 hours to add any outcome you want there. So now remember, we are on screen number 2. We have clicked on screen number 2, and I have chosen Whipple procedure and length of stay. This is screen number 3. You see that directly drawn from our EMR, I can get the outcome value, which is the mean length of stay, and then more important, because of the background, we have the ability to do that. You see the adjusted value for comorbidities. There are 19 comorbidities that you can adjust the actual value. And why this is important, because sometimes you think you are doing great, but if you adjust for comorbidities, you see that you're not as good as you think you are, or the other way around. Sometimes you beat yourself that the length of stay after a Whipple was too high, but you know what, this patient was 80 years old on steroids, and the adjusted value is actually lower. And more important, you can put benchmark values there. This is our benchmark for the length of stay, comes directly from our NESCIP performance. So not only you can, you know the actual value, the adjusted value, you also have the ability to benchmark yourself against reputable sources. What is more important is the interactivity of the platform. If If you hover over the spikes, the system returns you medical record number. So you can go, if you see a length of stay of 40 days, and you want to do a deep dive and see why this patient stayed for so long, you can just find out by that. Another very important component is that you can slice and dice the data any way you want, besides the very simple time bar where you can choose the time frame that you would like to see the specific outcome. In the left side of the screen, you can see a nested stratification ability too, for as many parameters as you want. So I can go and see the length of stay in octogenarians, that they are females and they are with steroids. And that I can do it with clicks of button, directly from the EMR in real time. One other thing that the platform gives you, and perhaps the next time we should have a real-time presentation of how this particular platform works, but one other thing that the platform gives you is it projects the outcome when it will become statistically significant or not. So it can tell you, be careful of your length of stay. With the current rate that you're moving, in 9 months, this will be statistically significant. Do something to fix that. And then you can go hover over the spikes, pull the 10 records that you think that they have contributed inappropriately into your outcome, and see what you can fix. The same thing, now we are changing the platform now. Remember, there were 3 buttons at the beginning. What was the first pillar of healthcare? Clinical outcomes. This is the second pillar, financial outcomes, directly from the repositories. Again, Whipple, I'm getting the total cost for the procedure. And with the next click, you see a similar appearance of platform. This time, however, the value that you see is the total cost. And we do have double stratification for that. The one is for risk adjustment for the patient, and the other is adjusted to inflation. The benchmark here is a little bit difficult to find because, as you know, systems usually they do not report cost values. The benchmark here comes from our administrators directly, and it is their wish how much we would be spending for a Whipple procedure. The same flexibility of the platform exists with nested stratification and time bars as well. And the same thing happens with the patient-reported outcomes platform. Here, for example, for a hepatectomy, I have chosen opioid utilization. I could have chosen PROMIS or QL15, or I could have asked my data managers to add SF36, or Medallia customer satisfaction surveys. Anything I want, I can put on this dashboard. Still, however, that might be a little bit more difficult for a clinician. It's great, but for administrators might not be that great. We wanted to simplify it even more. So we utilized this backbone of platforms to create one index. Think of it as a stock market value that goes up and down on the way while you're delivering clinical outcomes, financial outcomes, and patient-reported outcomes. And you can add a process to like compliance to ERAS. And you can give that's the index. And you can see when you're performing in time a procedure, if your index goes up or if your index goes down, if you are offering operational efficiency. Now, the outcomes that you can put in the buckets, they can be any. So for the clinical outcome here, we have chosen one. It was the length of stay, but that would be readmission rate. That would be any meaningful clinical outcome for you. The same is for the financial outcomes. The same is for the patient-reported outcomes. And you can also assign coefficients to that in order to do it more customized to what you actually need to track. We have actually shown in a publication about 2 years ago how we monitor ERAS implementation in our hepatectomies in real time with this platform, and you can see the improvement. that it correlated, that once we started implementing ERAS, we had improvement in our efficiency. Now, one would say that I keep talking about real-time and real-time and real-time and real-time, and it's okay to get real-time from patient-reported outcomes platform because they are already there. The same is for the financial database because you get numbers. How do you do that with the EMR? EMR, you need to have extraction, and you need someone to extract. And we have experimented about 5 years ago with NLP. Natural language processing doesn't work very well still. It's going to be working, hopefully in a few years, but still the accuracy of NLP, especially if you have a lot of parameters that you want to extract, is not good. We experimented with NLP 7, and the accuracy of the extracted data that we wanted to pull was about 82%, which is unacceptable. 1 out of 5 data points, they were completely wrong. So how did we remove the extractor, the physician? How do we make that automatic? We did a little bit of reverse engineering about that, and we tried to identify our fields in the repositories that we wanted to populate. So for the Whipple, since I'm using this example, for Whipples, we captured 1,300 parameters. 600 of those, they are plug and play, they are numbers, it's easy. The other 700, they needed some extraction. So what did we do? We went back and we saw which are the nodes where we can extract these 700 parameters from. And we identified 7 nodes that give us 95% of these parameters, which is preoperative HMP, path report, preoperative CAT scan, postoperative discharge summary, first postoperative visit. It was relatively easy to identify those nodes, and we created synoptic reporting for all those nodes. So there is no free text anymore. There is, and I'm going to give the example, I believe this is the Whipple OpNote example. It actually made our life easier because usually it took us about 12.5 minutes to dictate a Whipple. With the synoptic reporting, dictation of a Whipple is only 4.5 minutes. So it is very easy to extract the information that it's relevant. It makes things much, much faster. And this is, I'm very proud of this slide because it was the first time that we showed that auto-population directly from our EMR to the REDCap database. Remember that our registry is built around REDCap. It's possible with 100% accuracy. So then we were really able to remove from the equation the extractor. I'm going to switch gears. That is the outcome situation awareness. It doesn't matter how you achieve it. It was just an example of how to achieve it, as long as you have it. And outcome situation awareness should be not only clinical, but also financial. It's very, very important, and patient-reported outcomes. So as I said, we are switching gears. We are going to prescriptive analytics. The first step at preventing any complication, obviously, is identify the patients at risk. Of course, you need to have accurate predictions, because if you do not have accurate predictions, then you're fooling yourself. The solution to that, especially with the technologies that we have, is actually big data. And everybody knows that every single minute that passes, there are something like 200 million emails, new emails circulating in the web. In fact, the global data that exists right now, it's about 45 zettabytes. Zettabyte is an obscene number. It has 21 zeros behind it. And depending on the source that you're looking, 5 to 7% of this data are medical data. So 1 out of 12 piece of information that is stored somewhere there, it's all medicine. We can use them to do predictions. In order to do that, of course, we needed to move away from the symmetric relational processing that we have been doing until recently and proceed with parallel processing. Now, probably 2 years ago, when I first had this slide, that was a little bit more avant-garde. Now everybody in this room knows about big data analytics, so I'm not going to expand more on that. What I would like to say, however, is that there is a trend for precision medicine, personalized medicine, that revolves around all the omics, radiomics, metabolomics, proteomics, genomics, so you name it. I strongly feel that there is a very big spot for EMR-omics as well. You can extract data and leverage them in such a way so as to give you very important information for your patient, so as to customize the care that you are giving to the patient. Now, Neskip has been trying to do that, and it was a very important initiative with their calculators. They were not true prescriptive calculators. They were more predictive calculators with the intent to educate the providers and the patients. However, Neskip calculators, they have a lot of problems. I'm going to give the example again of the Whipple procedure. The Neskip calculator for the Whipple procedure depends, it's constructed on 4,500 patients, and it's a static calculator. And from these 4,500 patients, they come, 60%, they come from high-volume hospitals. This is how they are termed, high-volume hospitals. The definition of a high volume for the Neskip calculator is 10 Whipples a year. 10 Whipples a year. Sometimes we do 10 Whipples a week. I cannot have a calculator that it's based on this mix of hospitals, which arguably there are hospitals that they are not centers of excellence to what they're doing. Educate our patients or our providers, especially since there is not very good risk stratification, on how we are performing Whipples in our institution or at Harvard or at MD Anderson or at Mayo or at Johns Hopkins. They can't. So the solution to that, we thought, to be to move towards institutional calculators. What did we do? We took the Neskip calculator, we took our Whipples, and we created our own institutional calculator on predicting outcomes. And we, as expected, we have shown that our calculators predict what we do, all the outcomes much, much better than the Neskip calculators. We repeated that for hepatectomies. Same thing. And to make a long story short, we did that for all the procedures. And for all the procedures, we have our own calculators that predict much, much better what Neskip predicts. And not only that, here, since we are creating our own calculators, our own predictions, we do not need to stay in static predictions. We can use machine learning techniques so as to have predictors that each time that you put a new patient into the equations, you have a better constructed prediction model. So the model learns by the new patients that you put in. And then we became greedy after that. We're predicting clinical outcomes. Why? We have data on financial outcomes. We have data on patient-reported outcomes. Can we predict them? The answer is yes, we can predict them. As long as you have many observations, you can predict everything. How did we use them? I think yesterday was a question. Yes, sure, you predict something. What do you do with this? You can move from predictive analytics to prescriptive analytics. I'm going to give you very specific examples of what we have done. If you predict that your Whipple is going to be high risk of malabsorption, then you can start prescribing the very expensive pancreatic replacement therapy immediately. You do not need to wait the 2 usual months before you start understanding, oh, this patient most likely is going to be having malabsorption. You start immediately. If you have a high risk of readmission predicted, then you intensify your follow-up, and you can add the virtual care on the mix. Instead of the usual 4 visits in 6 weeks post-Whipple, we had 8 visits post-operative visits after discharge, half of them virtual, half of them in real life. And in addition, you can predict that someone will be readmitted because of dehydration. 7 out of 10 patients that they are admitted after Whipple is because of dehydration. You either send this patient scheduled, structured, in a rehydration center, or you send community paramedicine to their houses to hydrate them. You do not need to have a readmission for that. And you can get even more creative, since you can predict the complication, and the system gives you the ability to see what resources you have been using all these years. You can actually predict your utilization of your resources. So I can tell that a patient who's going to have the X amount of possibility to bleed, the X amount of possibility to have a leak, most likely is going to require 2.5 ERCPs, 5 CAT scans, 2 readmissions. And you can have, for a particular patient, the knowledge of how much this particular patient will be costing to your system. So we discussed about switching gears again. Keep in mind that this tries to be an ERAS 2.0 presentation. So the only thing I haven't done until now is to talk about elimination of variation in care. I talk about knowledge of outcomes in real time and on customization of care, completely the opposite. Everybody knows this slide. Everybody knows that $1 out of $5 that we spend in the United States is spent on healthcare. And in fact, that gets even worse. If we compare ourselves with similar healthcare systems, we spend double the money. That's non-sustainable. Again, everybody knows that. One of the biggest problems in non-sustainability of the system is the variation in care. And I'm going to show you, I'm showing this slide actually from our institution. This is the supply cost for a plain cholecystectomy. We have 13 hospitals in the core market area, not all of them, not all 50 of those. I'm talking only about the core market area. And every hospital has different cost supply. And not only that, surgeons within a hospital, these are the small bar chart that you see at the bottom, they have variation. So there is a lot of variation. And what is the best way of eliminating variation? Pathways like ERAS. ERAS is the best one according to evidence that it's out there. So what is more important though? Is it to eliminate variation or is it to customize precision medicine as I've been discussing the previous 30 minutes? Remember that now if you do have institutional predictive analytics that they are very, very accurate, you can actually, and you make them prescriptive, you can actually change the way that you offer care. I do not think that these two concepts are contradictory. I think actually that they complement each other very well. In the heart of every care pathway, you should have ERAS and use the very accurate self-learning institutional analytics that can tease out the few patients that they are not going to be benefited by ERAS, and there apply customized medicine to them early. So these two, that's the flexible ERAS concept, that's the FERAS concept. I'm going to give you some examples of that, how we are applying it. You have seen, no, actually you haven't seen that. When in our institutional calculators we predict urinary retention, we leave the Foley longer, 1 more day. You can argue that you can leave it 2, but it seems that it works well for us. If you have high risk of nausea and vomit after a Whipple, we do not remove the NG tube. For Whipples was a very big problem. I'm not quite sure that you are aware of that because I'm not sure that there is a HPB surgeon on the audience, but ERAS guidelines mandate removal of the NG tube the time of surgery. So the minute that the patient is extubated, we remove the NG tube. Well, with pylorus preserving Whipple, we have a reinsertion rate of about 35%. So 1 out of 3, in all, and this is not in our institution, this is widely reported from everybody. If you do pylorus preserving Whipple, not the classic, You have to reinsert the NG tube 1 out of 3 times. If you remove it, the time of surgery, the time of the surgery finishes. And that has created quite a few problems of aspiration, sometimes disruption of the anastomosis. So for us, that was a very big problem that we needed to solve. So if a patient is predicted that will have nausea or vomiting after a Whipple, we leave the NG tube for 2 days. If we have high risk of DGE, delayed gastric emptying, that means we actually we create a surgical G-tube so as to alleviate this problem. So these are ERAS pathway deliberate diversions. Since we have a very robust monitoring of compliance, we can actually add elements in the already existing 27 elements of the Whipple. These are ERAS pathway expansion examples. And I think I went over those 2 before, so I'm not going to bother you with those. I would like, however, to show you a different type of expansion of the pathway, which makes sense, and it's very much loved by administrators. This is called the Lean Labs initiative. So essentially what we try to do, we try to rationalize utilization of post-operative labs. Before the initiation of this project, before the expansion of this ERAS pathway, every Whipple patient, every day were getting labs, which was insane. There are patients with low risk for complications, intermediate risk of complications, high risk for complications. You can customize the amount of lab work that you can do. So we had patients that they were receiving no labs after a Whipple procedure, only 2 days of labs, 2 days of extended labs, and everyday labs. And we did that for 1 year. And about 200 patients from hepatectomies and pancreatectomies, Whipples, we saved $1 million, almost 900K. Only from labs, only from 2 procedures, just by doing that. And what allowed us to do that was the very robust platform of compliance we had through the ERAS pathway, because we attached the compliance to the Lean Labs protocol to our ERAS Whipple pathway. Now we are doing the Lean RADS. It has to do with the unnecessary X-rays, CAT scans that we get after procedure. There are so many. In all honesty, I do not recall when we found a useful post-operative chest X-ray. I don't recall. CAT scans are very debatable. About 1 out of 20 CAT scans in high-risk patients, they actually change what we do. 1 out of 20 CAT scans. We do 19 unnecessary CAT scans in Whipples, simply because we are treating our insecurity. We are ordering tests. So don't get me started. So I'm going to stop here. I just wanted to stress that I believe the ERAS concept, when it started with the first guidelines almost 20 years ago, it was really revolutionary for 2 reasons. First of all, it was introducing evidence-based medicine in a very structured way, but a very, very important component of ERAS, at least to my view, is the fact that it really eliminates variation in care, because you are able to audit your outcomes and your compliance to the pathway. So these are evidence-based and ability to audit. 20 years is a long time. We need to move ahead. And I believe we cannot stay only to doing those 2 things. I do strongly believe that we need to start infusing in our ERAS pathways the concept of personalized medicine with institutional developed, precise, prescriptive analytics that they depend on artificial intelligence. This is where I'm going to stop. Again, I would like to thank, where is Mike? I would like to thank, the organizing committee, Mike Scott and Matthias, and also my mentor in ERAS Society, Tonya, for everything that they have done for me the last 5 years. Thank you. Thank you. What follows, Tonya? What should I announce? I think it's the break, correct? Oh, now is the best abstract? Excellent.
So we'll take a break, reconvene for lunch at 12:45. Before the sponsored session for lunch, we'll announce the best abstract. Thank you very much.